Right, good morning. I thought I would just get on with this straight away today, but before I do, have a look at this t-shirt. Isn't that beautiful? It's by a company called The Mountain. You can look it up on eBay. And anyway, I just think it's beautiful. In Nepal today, when I might add that before I go any further, that I had an extraordinarily good day yesterday, and so far today's been good. This is the first time I've been swimming twice in a row for, well, I can't remember when I last did it, and anyway, and it went well today. I feel it a bit more today, I have to say, but it seems like I've done the right amount of drugs this morning. And yesterday morning. Anyway, I have to attract a guard's attention when I get out the pool because I need help. And I yelled out to one of the guards today, who immediately jumped out of his skin, literally. And I recognised that as post-traumatic stress disorder, basically. I thought, oh, now you're beginning to make sense. I bet you had horrible things happen to you as a child. Anyway, I got chatting as he was pulling me out of the pool, and I was right. See, I jump like that. I still do. Even if it's only John in the house, if he isn't careful and he comes up behind me too quietly, or comes to my side of the bed while I'm asleep, he's likely to get a thump. And when I go into hospital, they usually learn very quickly that if they need to wake me up for whatever reason, they need to stand away from me to do it, not touch me. Anyway, and then on the way home, I was listening to old 70s disco, specifically Donna Summer, and the long version of I Feel Love. I'll never forget when I first heard that. I was working behind the bar in a discotheque called Nero's in Portsmouth, and I did love that work, I have to say. I've done a fair bit of bar work and I've always enjoyed it. The busier that we are, the better. Anyway, and I have to say that I did find the song annoying at first, and I couldn't quite hear the lyrics, and I used to think it was an advert for Bacardi rum, because I thought that's what she was singing. Yeah, I know. But anyway. But then I had a boyfriend called Ray later on, and he liked Donna Summer, and I got into Donna Summer then, and I really liked her, and it's a pity it all went sour, but Donna Summer, I mean. And I mean, after she and Giorgio Moroder quit working together, well, that was the end of that, really. Didn't produce anything of any good later, in my opinion. Anyway, that's all really beside the point. I usually have to be in a good mood if I'm going to listen to that sort of thing, well, basically any of my music, because it always brings back memories of the time that I had the music, that I first heard the music. I mean, if I'm not careful, it can send me straight into flashback mode. But it hasn't today, but it did get me thinking, and specifically about sex, and how one of the most evil things that abuse of children does to children, basically, and particularly when they're adults, is the equating of sex and love. And by that I mean us believing that the only way we can get love and approval is through sex. And it is the most awful, awful, heart-wrenching, soul-destroying attitude to have. Because, of course, it opens you up to more abuse. It's as simple as that. And it also sets you on a cycle of, you have sex, you get what you want, and then afterwards you just feel bad and terrible, and it didn't fill that gaping hole in your soul that you were hoping for. And so the whole cycle starts off again and again and again. Now, I know women as well as men who've had experienced sexual abuse as children, who are all somewhat like this as adults, i.e. promiscuous, and for the same reasons. I haven't known anybody who's become frigid because of abuse, but then that's not to say that they haven't, it's just that they haven't told me, and probably because they don't talk about sex. You know, it's not something that they want to talk about. But I found, particularly when I was in a group for survivors, that it is one of the major topics spoken about, because of course we all have tremendous guilt wrapped up with it, and shame. And when I think about the thing that I find frightening, even now, is the situations I got myself into, the dangerous situations I got into. I mean, at that particular time, a late teenager, there was a man named Dennis Nilsson who was picking up men in bars and taking them home and chopping them up, literally, into pieces. He got caught because his drains got jammed. Oh, excuse me, let me take my hat off, that's rather daft. Anyway, you know, and I just think how bloody lucky I was. But you know, when you equate getting love and approval with sex, it just causes so much trouble, and not just in your sexual behaviour, but in your whole attitude to people. I've always had female friends, and I've never been able to see men as anything other than something to be frightened of, or something to have sex with. Somebody, I mean. And, you know, well, that's not the case anymore, fortunately. I see them as human beings, and they're not all the same. You know, and men... well, I don't want to get into that particular subject, because all I'm trying to say is that, you know, men don't really deserve as much of the bad press as they get, and I'm just as guilty of it because I tend to avoid them, even though I know they're different now. And but you know, there's this, and this all ties up with addiction also, because I certainly know for me and for other people that I've spoken with, that this feeling that comes up and threatens to destroy you, because that's precisely what it feels like. You go along, I mean, it was the running from that feeling was what my whole life was about. And I did it in all sorts of different ways. I did it by cutting myself, I did it by starving myself and binging, and through sexual behaviour, compulsive sexual behaviour. And one of the things that used to happen a lot when I was a teenager is I couldn't handle alcohol, and the reason I couldn't handle alcohol is because I didn't eat. And I would drink instead of eat, so of course I got drunk very quickly. But alcohol wasn't really my problem. It was the not eating and my general mindset. But I could not have... I'm just struggling here to find the words to... When this feeling... Well, it doesn't anymore because it did finally come up and out. But putting aside any physical addiction that people might have, like heroin, etc., but the very reasons people start using in the first place, whatever it is because they are overwhelmed, basically by fear. I now know that that pain that was in me, I didn't know that's what it was, but I used to before I went on a huge eating binge, I would be, or a sexual binge, I would be completely overwhelmed by, no, that's not true, I wasn't overwhelmed, that was the whole point. Something, I used to describe it as there was a monster inside me, and, you know, like Alien, the original Alien, I've never seen any other, but that, you know, where it comes bursting out the stomach, and that's sort of what it feels like, or felt like, and it was truly terrifying because I didn't know what it was, and I had to keep squashing it down. Now, of course, this is exactly what I used to do when I was a boy. That terrible, it's almost like panic, and whatever, you just have to keep it down. You can't possibly feel it. And, you know, when I eventually did, I understood why as a child I'd suppressed it all, because I think it would have killed me. It very nearly did as an adult. At least that's what it felt like. I tell you, there is no... I can't describe the agony, I really can't. And the terror involved, because that's actually what it was that kept coming up, was terror. Grief and sadness and anger and a deep, deep sorrow were all masked by this terror. The terror of feeling, the terror of letting that monster out. But you know, the only reason I have a good life today is because I did let that monster out. And I believe that I did make a decision to let it out, even though it wasn't a conscious one. And it wasn't till the end of 2007. I had previous parts of it come out in 94, 95 and 99. 98. And then nothing until 2007. And it was triggered by somebody. And an experience I had with somebody. Where for the first time in my life I realised that the reason this person was treating me that way had absolutely nothing to do with me, because I'd only just met them, so it couldn't possibly be to do with me, it was all to do with them. And that realisation itself, it's what started it off, and it started off as this nervous feeling in my stomach. It started at a dog show, Driffield Dog Show, and I remember asking my friend, I just said, you know, I feel terrible, my stomach's just awful. And that grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. Absolutely just awful. And then the tears started. Now, one of the reasons this is so terrifying is because you've got all these emotions there, but they're not attached to anything anymore. Because the events that triggered them have either gone from your memory, yeah, basically they become a part. Now, I'm not one of these people that has forgotten stuff that happened to me. Well, apart from one thing, as I think I've mentioned, that I did witness my best friend get killed. He wasn't, well, he was murdered, but not sort of directly. He died as a result of racist bullying. And I witnessed that, and I don't remember it at all. I've never dreamt about it. I just have no recollection whatsoever. The only reason I know it happened is because it was on the front pages of a newspaper. The boy who died of hate was the headline. Anyhow, so I've always remembered everything apart from that one incident. And of course, I can't really say I remember everything because I wouldn't remember the stuff I've forgotten. Which, self-explanatory that, isn't it? But as far as I'm aware, I remember everything. But the thing I never ever did was remember the emotions that went with the incident. And I realise now that some ignorant people thought I was lying. because I could say the most horrendous things without showing any emotion whatsoever. You know, talking about it as if I'd just got a loaf of bread, saying, oh, I'm going to go to the supermarket to get a loaf of bread. You know, and I would say, oh, I was raped just, you know, when I was 5 years old or whatever. Just like that, as if it, you know, and it's because I had completely separated the feeling from the event. And that splits you as a person, that splits you. And so I've always been these several different people. I don't mean in a multiple personality way, at least I don't think I do. And I always used to say every time I attempted therapy that I felt like two different people, completely different people, and there was this other Colin that I wanted to kill, basically. I didn't want him to be there because I felt he was fucking up my life completely, because it was him that wanted to do all these things like cutting myself and binging and all that stuff. And I came to realise, well, I think I've said before that I only ever came across one therapist that was any good, and he's still my friend today, and he was extremely good. And I came to understand that this Colin that I was trying to kill off was the child Colin, who was still there, not grown up, and was still terrified. And I had to acknowledge that and nurture him, and let him express himself, because that's all he needed. And anyway, so all this was triggered off by this man this morning jumping out of his skin. And yes, he did have a difficult childhood, but he says he doesn't remember most of it. Well, no, that is also a very common, you know, when people say, oh, I don't remember being a child, you know damn well they've been abused, otherwise they'd remember. You know, and then people say, oh, I was very happy as a child, and then you ask them specifics, you know, well, and they say, oh, I don't know, I don't remember most of it. And there we are. But to me, this is what's behind addictive behaviour. And unless you've been there, it is just so hard to describe that feeling that at all costs you must suppress. But you don't know that's what you're doing. And I might add that as much as people show little understanding and compassion and say, oh, these people should just pull themselves together, you know, they don't give them any space to let these feelings out. I know that the psychiatric profession's idea of helping me was by squashing these feelings even more by using strong antipsychotic drugs on me. So anytime I express feeling, that's what happened. So of course it became even more difficult for me to heal and get anywhere, because every time I showed feeling, I was punished. That's the way I saw it. You know, and they had me in a fog. I don't know if you ever heard of chlorpromazine, Largactil, the liquid cosh they call it. It was on the TV again yesterday, because that's what they do to old people or people with dementia, to stop them causing trouble. It's a vile, vile thing to do. And I tell you what, the side effects from it are appalling. But anyway, you know, so that angers me, I have to say, that these ignorant people go on in such, and you know, and they refer to drug addicts as junkies, or alcoholics just as drunks. And quite often the people doing this are smoking away on their fags, or they're fat. And I think, don't you fucking understand, you idiot? You know, look at yourself, look at your own addictions. Look how hard it is for you to diet. Look how hard it is for you to stop smoking. Don't you dare fucking judge. It annoys me. You know, and people, you know, whenever you see bad behaviour, whenever you see weird behaviour, particularly very strange sexual tastes, it's all to do with that stuff. You know, your past and your childhood. And it's not an excuse, and it doesn't really... It doesn't mean... I mean, if as a result of that you become a paedophile or you murder somebody, it doesn't make it all right. It doesn't mean that, oh, poor you, you know, we won't punish you, or we won't make you hold you responsible for what you've done. That's not what it's about. But it's acknowledging the fact that we, as a society, produce these people because of the way we treat our children. And, you know, when you think about it, when people are... Anyway, no, I'm not. I really was going to make this shorter today, and I guess it is going to be shorter by about 8 minutes, because I figured out that half an hour is an awful long time to expect somebody to sit and listen. I know some do, but it will put a lot of people off, and I tried to keep this down to 10 today, but I wasn't able to. But you know, I know that there are people who listen to this that have had the same sort of experiences and they're still stuck in it, or they're still numb, or they're still whatever. And I know what you have to go through to get through it, and you need the space and the support to do it. But once those feelings come up, and you know, I couldn't force mine up, it was spontaneous. Don't ask me how, but somehow I just became ready. Those 3 times, and the last was certainly the worst. I guess I needed to be strong enough to deal with that, and you know, in a safe environment, which was this house. But I'm living proof that no matter what happens to you, you can survive it and have a good and productive life and enjoy it. I mean, I do enjoy it, and I love the people I have in my life because they're in my life by choice, and everybody else I just ignore or tell them to fuck off because I don't put up with shit anymore. Anyway, that's me done, and well, I have made it shorter by 7.5 minutes thereabouts. But enjoy your day. Bye.